Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Paula Ramos, Telemundo contributor and vice host, and our esteemed panel.
Great. All right. Can you all hear me? Ish? Yes. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here and for being part of this conversation, which is titled Leading Latinas, Recentering Humanity Through Activism and Action. I think this is the first time that there are so many Latinas in this type of stage, so I'm very excited about that. Most excited to introduce all the incredible panelists that we have. Olga Segura, who is an actress, she's a producer, and she's been an incredible voice bridging Mexican and American culture. We have Monica Ramirez, who is an activist, and she is the president and the founder of Justice for Migrant Women. And we have Diane Guerrero, who I see on my TV screen all the time, and she is an actress, she's an activist, but more than anything, she's an incredible voice within the immigrant rights movement. So thank you all so much for being here. Thank you. I think today, yes. Today the conversation is about something very simple, no? Which is about bringing humanity to a community that has been politicized, neglected, and very distorted for years. No? And I'm talking about the Latino community, the Latinx community. Typically, when they talk about us in the form of stats. They talk about us in TV screens, pundits that either love us or hate us. And amidst that, they forget the real stories and the faces behind the community. And I think today you're going to understand that the story of the Latinx community is a story, yes, about immigration, but it's also a story about courageous women. It's a story about dreaming really big, but it's also a story about pain and fear. And right now, the story is about having incredible power across the world, but also being one of the most vulnerable communities in the entire world as well. So you're going to hear that story through the lens of these incredible Latinas who all represent different parts of that journey and different voices within that journey. So let's begin. My first question is about power. Now, when I see you three, I think about power. I think about the power that you all have to tell stories, to represent stories, and to fight for dignity of communities. And that's a lot. So my first question is, how did you each find that power? And really, how did each of your very, very different upbringings sort of serve as an opportunity or as a barrier to attain that power?
So I'll start.
Yeah.
My story really starts with the story of my family migrating to the United States as migrant farm workers. And my identity as a Latina in the United States is very much tied to the fact that my parents and grandparents worked in the fields crisscrossing this country, picking the fruits and vegetables that we eat. So my power comes from my history, from my family, and also, I have a very incredible and huge responsibility in that I bring forward the voice of rural Latinas. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes when people think of rural America, they don't think of Latinos living in rural America. And so part of the work that I've done is really trying to bring forward the voice of rural Latinas specifically, and bringing forward the stories of my community gives me hope, strength, and power.
Mm-hmm. For me, as a Mexican immigrant, the power, I find it when I connect with women, men, everybody in our community, identifying our differences so we can build stronger and better. As you know, the Latinx community, it's a lot of nationalities. Within the U.S. is so many structures. And I feel like the only way that we're gonna actually build better is by identifying each other and really seeing that we're different. But at the end of the day, we all come from the same, and we're all Latinx. So yeah.
I would say that I find my strength as a first-generation American, as the daughter of immigrants, as an influencer, and as now an activist. As immigration is one of the most one of the biggest issues in our country right now, I'm able to speak on this issue from experience. My voice is authentic. My family has been separated. I know what it is to come from the immigrant community. And I'm able to speak on the experiences, on our experiences. As an influencer, I'm able to tell stories that reflect that reality. And I'm able to send messages to my community that they are not alone. And I'm also hopefully able, and which I have seen, I've been able to educate others who are not as close to the issue on what impacts our community.
So a word that you used, Olga, was this word that we keep tossing around, which is Latinx. So how many people in this room know what Latinx means? Okay, there's a handful. But you've probably maybe heard it, no? So when I think of the word Latinx, this is what I think of. No, I think of these women, their stories, but that X that people are sort of freaked out about, that X is not an insult to the dictionary. It is nothing but an invitation to all of the stories and the voices and the people that have traditionally felt left out of the Latino community. No, I'm talking about them. I'm talking about Afro-Latinos, queer Latinos, indigenous Latinos, Latinos that live on the other side of the border, that live in the United States. That's Latinx. Latinx also means that we have to sort of expand our understanding of the challenges that the community is facing, right? Because typically when we think of the Latinx community, we think that the challenges end and start with immigration. Mm-hmm. That's just one part of the huge story. No? That's just one layer of the many other factors. So Monica, I want to start with you there because you are fighting for the community every day. You're exposed to these challenges. You have lived these challenges yourself. So can you walk us through and sort of paint a picture of some of the challenges that the Latinx community is facing here and truly across the world?
Yeah, thanks. So I really appreciate you raising the fact that we as a community are not a one-issue community. When we talk about the experiences of Latinx community members in this country, particularly Latinas, we have to name the fact that the highest percentage of Latinas in the labor force are concentrated in low-paid jobs. We as Latinas have the biggest pay gap, so our pay gap is 54 cents to the dollar paid to white non-Hispanic men. Wow. And with that, I always start there because I think that when you look at the pay gap and as it affects Latinas, many of us who are heads of households, we then have a better understanding of what it means when you're not being paid fairly. That means you have less money to save, you have less money for rent, you have less money to help pay for your kids to go to school. And so we as a community are facing issues related to housing, to education. We can't deny the impact of the rise in nationalism and the discrimination against our community. We can't deny the fact that there are laws in this country and other parts of the world that exclude marginalized community like ours that have long-term detrimental effects. And certainly one of the issues that we have all worked on together has been on addressing the issue of workplace sexual violence against Latina workers. So these are just some of the issues. And I think the other thing that we have to name here is that people think about immigrant workers or migrant workers to the United States as simply economic migrants who are coming to the United States for better opportunities. But I think that we have to call out the fact that we're seeing more climate refugees coming to the United States, people who can no longer live in their countries because it's not viable, either because they're not able to farm or for other reasons that make it impossible for them to live in their towns, cities, and countries. So immigration is one issue that we need to address, but we also have to talk about the economy, about discrimination, about safety and dignity at work, and some of these other topics, and we can't separate them. Because when I walk into a room as a Latina, I bring all my identities, just as other people in our community do. So we have to really take an intersectional approach to addressing these issues on a policy level, as well as at a societal level.
And I think another underlying thread there is that as many barriers as there are, one thing about our community is that we're fighters. No, we don't give up. We keep going, and that's something that I think we all feel very strongly about. And Olga and Diane, you both are examples of people that have turned incredible challenges and turned all of that into opportunities. No, you did not give up. When it was very easy to give up, you didn't. So can you talk a little bit each of those specific experiences of where you felt like you were turning something into an opportunity and how you all think that what is the opportunity right now for our community? Like, what does that look like?
For me, I'm one of the 3 immigrants, original signatories for Time's Up. And when I started, when America Ferrari invited me to like sign this letter, I was like, yes. I mean, the letter that Monica wrote. I was like, for sure, please.
And I'd even take a step back. I don't know how, I mean, I'm assuming everyone knows what Time's Up is, but I would explain it just in case to remind everyone.
You wanna, she's, by the way, just so you know, she's the one that wrote the Dear Sisters letter.
Yeah.
She's the reason why Time's Up exists. Yep. So, for me, as a Mexican immigrant, just to see a Mexican American that actually is leading and started one of the most important movements in the history of this country, and not to mention Carmen Perez from the Women's March, another Mexican American. That is what actually we need to start seeing. So you explain Time's Up, because it's your responsibility.
It's my responsibility. So, you know, in October of 2017, the world shook when Alyssa Milano asked people to disclose the sexual violence against them, and really gave public view to the Me Too movement, which Tarana Burke started. And among those who were impacted by sexual violence, we started hearing about were the actresses who had talked about their experiences with sexual violence by Harvey Weinstein. And I'm the co-founder of the Alianza Nacional de Campesinas, the first national farm worker women's organization in the United States. And we understood the pain that the actresses were disclosing, because 90% of farm worker women across our country disclose sexual violence at work as being one of the major problems they face. And so we wrote this letter that was published in Time magazine called the Dear Sisters letter to women in entertainment, telling them that they were not alone, that we believe them, and that we see them. And that letter went viral. And that letter helped spark what is the Time's Up movement, which was the coming together, you know, through the leadership of women in entertainment. It was the coming together of mainly women across industries to put an end to workplace sexual violence and to call for gender equity for women in all spheres.
So when that opportunity came on my table, and then Time's Up became Time's Up, I was one of the only immigrants on those meetings, on those like tables, and I was like, wait a minute. Where are all my friends? Like actually the other immigrants that are working on, you know, the TV shows and movies here in the US. They're actually, you know, first they were immigrants, but now they're like American citizens. Mm-hmm. So I started like with that opportunity, what I started doing was like, okay, let's build a bridge, right? Between Diane Guerrero and me. Eva Longoria, America Ferrara, Gina Rodriguez, and Kay del Castillo, Ana de la Reguera, Natalia Cordova Buckley. I mean, there's so many actresses. How can we build a bridge between us? Monica, actually, it's so funny that we're sitting like this, but this is, you know, she's the one that is holding this bridge for us. She's the one that's creating these opportunities for us. So, yeah.
We see our community leading some of the biggest movements that we have on gender equality, on immigration, on we have the largest voter electorate. And we see our community really rising to the occasion, uniting ourselves, essentially. We see that we have key components missing, right? We're not being cared for in the way, and so we're seeing what we're missing, and we are providing for ourselves, helping to register, helping to motivate our community to see their needs. In particular, in the entertainment industry, I mean, in the last 8 years, we've seen a spike in representation. That is because we said, we see these things that are missing from our government, from our politics, from our communities, from our healthcare, from our education, and we are making it our business to gather these resources or to letting our people know that what we need. And how do they see that? They see that through us. We are making sure that people see that this is important for the growth of our our country, for the growth of our communities, for the well-being of our country. I know, that's all.
Which brings me to solidarity. No, this conversation that you just had, this partnership, the way that you all collaborate, that's solidarity. No, and you can agree or disagree with Trump. You can like him or not, but I think the one thing that we do know is that there are many immigrants and many in our community that are facing an incredible moment of darkness right now. And the beauty that we have seen is the solidarity that has arisen, that has come out of that, no? And there's a beautiful moment that you all were part of, which is through the Mi Querida Familia Latina effort. So Mi Querida Familia Latina was an open letter that over 200 Latinx actors, activists, influencers, prominent voices stepped up, and they wrote a letter that was published in the New York Times that went viral, but it was a message of love, and it was a message of solidarity to the Latinx community that had just suffered the awful El Paso massacre attack, and after the massive ICE raids in Mississippi. And y'all were part of that. So Monica, you love writing letters.
I love writing letters.
No, but so what was that creation like? I mean, what was your thought process? And as you're writing all these letters, it seems like something so simple, but there's so much power to that. So what was going on in your mind?
So I'm a grassroots organizer, and what's important to me is connecting to you and to as people, right? Beyond the issues, beyond our economic strata, et cetera. And so for me, writing these letters is about connecting as human beings with other people. And so with the El Paso massacre and the raids that were happening, I was feeling like this real sense of urgency to speak to our community, because having worked for so long on the ground, I understood that these events were going to be causing panic in our community, and we needed to speak to our community with one voice. And so Diane and I met up, and I said, Diane, I think that we need to say something so that our community can hear from us and can hear that they're not alone, and that we're going to bat for them. And so then that kind of started the conversation. I reached out to America and talked to Olga and Alex and Eva Longoria. So the 6 of us were the ones who organized the letter. And within 6 days, so from the idea to organizing the 250 people who signed on to the letter, we then got it published in the New York Times. And the letter had over 1 billion media impressions. There were 800 media articles that were written about the letter in a 2-day span. And the response that we got from the letter was that people started to email us, and they were saying things like, I felt so alone and I couldn't breathe. And after I read the letter, I felt like I could breathe again. We got an email from someone in Pennsylvania, and she said, I felt like I was in a desert with no water. And after I read the letter, I felt like I had found water. Wow. So the response has been incredible, but both of you jumped in, so you should talk a little bit about why you jumped in and what it meant to you.
It was a call to action. It was a call to humanity. And for those suffering, for those who felt like they couldn't do anything, to let them know that we are working and we were with them. My mission has been to show my community that I love myself and that I love them. And hopefully through that, they can also exercise that. And I guess through letters like this, we're hoping that organizations, businesses, politicians can exercise the same, find the value in our community, love us, value us, appreciate us, because we're part of you.
For me, it's just, they need to be human. We need just to feel like we are human. I mean, I see a lot of people here in the crowd, and I think that only I can say is just to invite you to, forget about the social, economic, and your background, and all the unconscious bias that is affecting us, to make decisions, and just be a human.
Yeah. I know we have to wrap up.
Yeah.
But so let's end there. There's a room full of people. After we're done, there's so much stuff going on. But I think it's important that you each give them a call to action. There's so many things that we're flooded with every day, but I think it's important for them to hear directly from each of you, what should we do?
For me, in the business, I feel like if you are creating a product that you want to target Latinx, if you're writing a script that you want to target Latinx, that you want to, the Latinx consumers, which is the biggest in this country, just hire a Latinx to be developing that. Don't, make assumptions of like, just hire us. And all I have to say is like, please don't like, it's like nothing, we're trying to find for like nothing about us without us. Mm-hmm. And that's where I'm gonna leave it. Mm-hmm.
Stop investing in anti-Latinx groups. Stop investing in political agendas against the Latinx community. That is how you're gonna, that would be my call to action.
My call to action is to join us. We're building the world of our dreams for all of us, and we can't build that world without you.
So I just want to thank you all so much. Thank you for listening. And